The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice looming in the background. That sounds like a T-shirt or something. But no.
Justice looming. Justice looming over Elijah's shoulder.
Will justice be done this weekend? Purdue, Nebraska on the Peacock. So, yeah, we'll talk some Husker football. We'll dive into the hilarity at UNLV. That is upsetting for those of you who've bet futures on the old running Rebs. Back in the day, Tarkanian would not have hosed the Larry Johnsons and Stacey Augmans of the world, the Armand Gillians. What's wrong with Vegas when they can't even they can legally pay a guy now? And they didn't, allegedly. We'll get plenty of thoughts on that. Nebraska, the mood, all right? You as a Nebraska fan, a deep dive into just your feelings as a fan base, not only going into Purdue, but the whole season outlook. You got a bit of a, not even a wake-up call as a team, but as a fan base, you're just like, okay, this was supposed to be 4-0. What the heck? Are you doom and gloom, or are you like, okay, let's see how this thing plays out? We'll talk about that. Mike Babcock with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. We'll spend some time with Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald. Evan in hour 2. Troy Dannon sat down with Greg Sharp, and some new news on the Big Red, what they're not wanting to do anymore. A letter formally to Mr. Petitti in the Big Ten. We'll hear about that. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. Find us in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's a way to catch us. Also along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give the show Twitter handle or X a follow at HVarsity Radio. Find Elijah at Herbal Essence. Can find me, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. Elijah, how we doing? You had a restful night. No bowling, no beers. Yeah,
made some pasta.
You made pasta.
Yeah, that was good. Pasta, a little Italian sausage in there, more of a pesto Alfredo.
Spicy or mild?
Some red pepper flakes, but nothing too spicy. It was mild sausage that I added red pepper flakes to because I wanted a little bit of kick.
Okay.
I usually am more of a hot Italian sausage kind of guy.
Give me the hot, and away we go. So
that wasn't too bad. Got another episode of Rings of Power knocked out, so that was nice.
Is this like wizards and beards and...
It's an origin story for Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Give me that. You wouldn't believe how much I've been diving into some of the Lord of the Rings lore over the past couple of weeks. I got the whole history of Middle-earth pretty much mapped out in my own head at this point.
I knocked Game of Thrones until I got COVID, and then I was like, this was pretty cool. But that's where I draw a line when it comes to medieval flair.
Okay, if you liked Game of Thrones, you'll like Lord of the Rings, but it's okay. Well, one of these days we'll sit down, my house. I'll smoke us up some meats. We'll drink some beers.
It is going to take.
We'll try all the different ways you can eat potatoes.
Okay, your bribery efforts. You should be at UNLV. All right, I mean you're making progress.
Okay, so I'll just finish it off by saying it'll be the best 12 hours you ever spent watching the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings.
I'll fall asleep. We'll go food coma. It'll be all over, and away we go.
And you'll wake up to Frodo on the the outskirts of Mount Doom.
No, I will wake up to third helpings of Elijah's magic potatoes. 489-1240. 489-1240 can jump in that route. The other Dave is in on this stream first. NASCAR Eric checks in as well. A photo finish with the other Dave and NASCAR Eric. Tiger Shark is here. KG says, what's up? Tim Wolf back. Good to have you. We have Justin, says, howdy. Good to have Justin in. Uncle Larry is present. Tim is here. Tim out in Idaho got us some, speaking of smoking and grilling and all sorts of seasonings for the meat, for the grill. Tim, we were going to dive into some of that seasoning you gave us, bud, probably this weekend. Jeff Snitley is here, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Is Jeff checking in? Good to have you. Brian is in. Walter from south of Philly. Nebraska fans are nodding with you, Walter, as I read this in all caps. Imagine Walter on his patio or on the golf course, not screaming for, but screaming, stop the run. Stop the run. One more time. Stop the run. We'll see if Nebraska can do that here this weekend. You know, there's supposed to be remnants of that damn hurricane that make their way to Indiana/West Lafayette around 2 o'clock. To about the end of the fourth quarter.
Kind of like the remnants of the blade that was destroyed, that was reformed for
No,
Aragorn.
Please don't go medieval.
King of Gondor.
Yeah, medieval sorcerer's magic garbage. Okay. Black Hills Brennan is here. The real Matthew says, let's not become Purdue's slump buster. Thank you, Matthew, for that. Jeff is in. Arlo is here. Brian checks in. Says, figures, most watched TV on Friday night was an NU loss. Well, that was hurtful in the overtime period and in the fourth quarter. I don't disagree there, but there have been worse losses with similar audiences, Brian. So at least it was on paper hard-fought 31-24 overtime loss. If you watched overtime, your eyes still hurt. Great Red Shark is here. Good to have him. Like it. I think you're getting called a nerd, Elijah.
Yeah. Plenty of people are calling me that.
Yeah. Justin's capitalizing in the ogre voice from Revenge of the Nerds.
But Josh chimes in and says he's also watching Rings of Power. Okay. So at least some people here have taste.
Good work, Josh. Brent is here. Eric is in. So away you go. We'll get to more of your comments. Kevin is in from Kansas City.
We also get to the phone lines here where Colton's been hanging out.
Oh, wow. Colton, thanks for calling, man. Welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I want to say you guys do a great job. I only get to listen when I'm running, picking up kids and taking them to events, but I love all the talk. Quick thing, I'll just throw it out there and let's hear what you guys had to say about it. But the big thing that I took away from Friday is, a lot of people are saying, we weren't getting a lot of calls, but, that's sports. I feel like we got to rise above that on the occasion. But the big thing with me is, with Matt Rule, wasn't a big fan of how we ended the half or the fourth quarter. I didn't understand the whole timeout thing, especially the challenge for 2 yards didn't make a lot of sense. And then the last thing is, I have not been at ease with kicking, even coming into the season. Wouldn't you expect us to, if we're even with a backup kicker, shouldn't we be calling a play on 3rd and 4 to get a couple yards and go for it on 4th down? Thanks, guys. Love to hear what you got to say.
Colton, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, it looked like Nebraska was taking their sweet old time in that 2-minute drill, but the back shoulder to Banks made it all okay. So they knew what they were doing. It worked out. But there was enough urgency. I was kind of thinking as we were watching, Elijah, from the 6th floor, okay, maybe a little quicker, but Nebraska executed pretty flawlessly. Dylan has been in 3 out of the 4 games. He's done well with a 2-minute drill to score before half. So there's that. There's 2 end zone interceptions that should be 2 more touchdowns. His ball placement's been incredible. So I trust it. I think their internal clock, they rep the hell out of it on top of his talent level. So I think end to half, Nebraska is a dangerous team in a good way. When it comes to game management and timeouts and challenges, I don't disagree that the challenge, somebody with a better view coulda, woulda, shoulda said, don't burn a timeout there because it's the guy. There's green between the Nikes. And lastly, when it comes to kicking, I would give one more shot, 40 and in. And it doesn't have to be end the game a situation, but give it to me in the flow of a ball game where one is made before I'm just going Coach Leach and going for it on fourth down all the time. Now, if it's end of game, I am at this point changing my play call, changing my philosophy. It's 4-down territory, period, end of discussion. I don't trust it. Maybe they've worked and had a good week. You still got to see it. You don't want to end up going to Purdue and as a 9.5-point favorite having this thing come down to a kick again because your defense doesn't show up or your run game has not improved and it turns into Dylan go win the ball game. I mean, it needs to progress. I think the team's going to keep getting better. I don't doubt that. That being said, what you don't have faith in right now is your kicking game. Well, they can keep repping and keep getting better, but you still got to go do it. I mean, kicking's a whole different animal, and it's been a bad deal so far for Nebraska.
Well, Walter chimes in here on the stream with the stat. Nebraska has made 13 of their 21 field goal attempts in Matt Rule's 16 games as a head coach. That comes out to 62%. And the stats will tell you that kickers in late game pressure situations, I mean, it's common sense, but they're going to be worse than their averages. If your average is at 62%, if you can expect that's going to drop in a late game situation where their pressure is on the kicker, down to what would you say, 50% or less?
I would cut the 62% in half.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm saying 3 out of 10, they'll hit it.
Okay.
Now,
so with that in mind, that's what Nebraska is going to have to weigh their fourth down attempts late in games moving against. 4th and 3 from the 30-yard line. Do you think you have greater than, as you said, let's call it a 35% chance to make the field goal? Do you think you have a better chance of picking up on fourth down?
What's a greater risk? Kicking the field, attempting a field goal, or letting Dylan and the offense go make 5 yards and 2 downs?
The field goal is the bigger risk.
Big time. Absolutely. And back to Walter's numbers, 13 of 21, you had 3 different quarterbacks that aren't as skilled as Dylan Raiola a year ago. You've got this guy that can go make a play for you.
That's the question that I ask moving forward is, do you think Dylan Raiola in this offense has a better chance of picking up fourth down than your kickers do of making the field goal?
Yes.
Coming into this game, do you think that was true? I think coming into the Illinois game was true, which calls into question some game management from Matt Rule. And it's not the first time we've had questions about game management with Matt Rule.
Listen, his take this week and at the end of Friday night was it was a makeable field goal. Go do your job. And what happened? You had a snap, you had a little Ray Finkel, and then you had a hook left. I mean, the whole how does that happen? It happens occasionally, maybe 3 times in a season with normal teams. But I just don't know, and I like Easy Ed. But from a coverage standpoint, kickoff, punt, there was too much breakdown against Illinois. And is it going to get worse or is it going to get better? Because right now you can't trust it. And your defense, what they were supposed to be, aren't what they are. The shining thing to hold on, hope for, if you're a Nebraska fan, is your quarterback and some of your wideouts when they're playing zone. Right? So it's a drastic look compared to what you thought coming in. So buckle up and giddy up is my humble advice this season. Mm-hmm. Do they keep improving? Do they get better at kicking? Can they find somebody? Or does Elvano get healthy? But even with Elvano, say he gets healthy, it was still not a sure thing, a year ago with the poor guy. You know? Between injury and the mental part of kicking, at least you got Maher there, which is good because he's done it. He's kicked in. He's punted.
Too bad he doesn't have any eligibility left.
Oh, I think you throw a jersey on him and make him prove you're wrong. I mean, Maher was he was a bombs away guy in Big D. He was great. Now, it didn't, he's out of the league now, but he still had a decade in. So I don't trust the kicking and the emphasis, the urgency has got to go 10 times what it's been on coverage.
Yeah, we're just at the point of the season where you know what you are. Like we talked about coming into fall camp, you're not 100% sure what you are. You're not sure what you are whenever the first game hits. Once you're into Big Ten play and you've made it through that first game, you know what you are. Can you still get better? Can you still improve upon things? Yes.
This is what you are, but they got miles to go.
Yeah, but what you are is a team that does not have a field goal kicker right now.
No, that's fair, and you need to play accordingly when it comes to situations. The biggest thing is not only do you miss a scoring opportunity, presumably in a 7 to 3 point ball game in the world of the Big Ten, but it's the momentum factor, and momentum's such a key thing in this league and in every level of sport. Who's with us?
We go to Tad for about 30 seconds.
Tad, we got you in, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, just listened and sounds really interesting, but, just a reference to golf. If you're playing and you got a draw on the kickers, you're going to have to start on the right side of the goalpost in order to get that ball to come in.
Right.
It's all about your foot placement.
Well,
so his foot placement and the snap are all key.
Big time, Ted.
And also, I'm just going to tell you real quick, if we don't run the football this week and pound it like we know how to do it, I'm going to be disappointed. Thanks, guys.
Ted, appreciate you. Give us a shout on the reaction. For sure. We'll check in with Mike Babcock next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Wednesday edition, powered by Cornhead Lager. Mike Babcock with us from Hail Varsity Hurrdat Sports. Get Babber's bi-weekly newsletter / column. It's incredible. All things Big Red. Can email Mike and do so to get that bi-weekly newsletter. Mike B at hurrdatsports.com, at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers out of the gate. Tuck jumps in with a Ask Babbers. What would Babbers do to fix the kicking situation?
That's a practice situation. I think you just have to constantly kick the ball, put it in different positions on the field, kick the ball, put it in different positions on the field, kick the ball, give those guys an opportunity to learn what the options are in kicking.
Time to ice the old leg, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to keep moving forward and learn from what happened. But it was very frustrating to lose that way. Here's the Illinois game in front of me on my desk. I move it over to the edge of my desk, then I knock it off there because I think that enough has been said about Illinois. Hopefully the Huskers have learned from the experience and they've moved on by now. And I think it's the same way with the kickers. I think you have to move on. You've got to get Alvano healthy. Tough situation. First time in that context with that crowd can get in your head, I think, and that's probably what happened there. Even though that crowd is on your side, it's still a different context than what you've been used to when you're kicking in practice and you've got some kind of noise going on in the stadium or the practice field or whatever. It's different when you get there and there are actually 86,000 people there yelling, and so much is on the line at that point, and you're aware of that.
Well, little rough to simulate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more of a in the head kind of a thing, I really think.
And one of the things is we had Tad call in at the end of last segment and compare it to a golf game. And if you're going to compare it to a golf game, let's say you lend 25 yards short of the green on the 18th hole. You're in a close match with your playing partner, and you need to get this next shot short of close. You might putt it from 20 yards as opposed to pulling out the wedge, if you get what I'm saying.
Right, because some of us are garbage with wedges.
Yeah, exactly. And some teams don't have a kicking game, so what do? You keep the offense out there, which is your putter. That's kind of what I think you do moving forward. Is
so
you
putt
understand,
from the rough is what you're telling me?
You understand, with this pressure on, I don't have any faith in my wedge. Is the putter going to get it done? Maybe, maybe not, but you go with what you have more confidence in.
What club can you hit, Babs?
And I think right now, if we're talking about Nebraska's offense, what club in the bag can they hit? Well, you give the ball to Raiola and let him go do something. That's the club.
Mm-hmm.
Pull out the driver and you smack it on down.
Yeah. You just hit the ball to the next tee box.
Yeah, and then people are upset right there.
Uh-huh.
You want to upset them.
Sir,
let's go that route.
we require a shirt at this club, and you can't use the driver on the green.
I think using the driver on the green would be like taking a knee on the opposing 25 in a tie ball game with 15 seconds left on 4th and 1. I think that's what that would be.
Possibly. So other red flags, Mike, as we are going to hold you in position here before the move on and learn from it. What red flags did you see that need to be moved on from and learned from, aside from the kicking situation?
Well, I think that you've got to be able to run the ball consistently in this league, and you've got to be able to stop the run in this conference. And I think that was concerning. And you know, obviously at the end in overtime, you know, I don't know what the situation was, you know, what the thinking was, but you got to be able to protect the quarterback. You got to give him an opportunity. You can't have the whole defensive line running after him when he takes the snap, which is about what it looked like. I mean, the thing broke down, and that was not a good situation because you knew that was what was going to happen. The defense knew that Nebraska was going to try to throw a pass, and you've got to come up with some kind of a system where you can protect the quarterback sufficiently that he can at least attempt a pass to somebody to give you a shot at it, and I didn't see that happen.
Mike Babcock's with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. There's not a lot of golf fans in the stream, not as many golf fans, but it's the appropriate analogy. Use the club you can hit.
Yes.
So that's fair. Well, I want to get to the run game, Mike. And do you think it's a faith thing, or all right, go with what again is working? And your 5-star was working, throwing the football. Now balance is great. I just don't know where Nebraska's at running the football, bud, when they have to. And 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7, in 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, like it was against Colorado.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't give Dylan Raiola an opportunity to throw the ball. I think that obviously that's the focus of your offense, but you've got to be able to have that threat to run the ball. Otherwise, you're going to be in a situation like he was in when it came to overtime and things just fell apart. You know, you've got to be able to run the ball and you've got to be able to protect the quarterback, and those two things are related to each other. Being able to run the ball puts the defense on alert that, hey, this might not be a pass, and then you give Raiola the opportunity to do what he does. You know, it's a necessity,
sure, in
the Big Ten, I think, to be able to run the ball, to be physical. That was the thing that, you know, Rule said we weren't the more physical team in that game. You've got to be physical, and Nebraska just was not when it needed to be, and that was concerning.
Mike, with the running game in mind, would you find a way to get Heinrich Haarberg more involved within that offense? We heard that a little bit from the coaching staff this week. Matt Rule talked about it on Monday. Would you find a way to get Haarberg more involved in that offense, try to kickstart the rushing attack? I'm not sure how you'd go about doing that. That's why coaches make the big bucks, but is that something you'd turn to?
Yeah, I'm not sure how you do that either, Elijah. I don't know whether you make him a fullback type player and put him in the backfield, and then, you know, there's the opportunity to throw the ball to him if you want to. There's the opportunity to do what they did, which was pass it to him. And, you know, there are all kinds of things that you can do with him, but you can't – that's not going to be, I think, the focus of your offense, is to have two quarterbacks on the field and try to take advantage of his ability on a consistent basis. I think he has to be part of the game plan in some way, a tight end or a fullback or whatever. But you still have to be able to run the ball with Dowdell, if he's the guy, or Ramir or Emmett, whatever. I think Rule said something about he had originally planned to get Dowdell about 25 carries in the game. What he carried 20 times, I think. But you got to get him going. You got to get Dowdell going if he's going to be the guy. And then that gives you the opportunity. It's the same, it's what Illinois was able to do. You establish a rushing game, and by the fourth quarter, that's an important part of it, because physically you hopefully have worn down the defense. And I think there was an element of that.
Those body blows for sure, where you just stay with it and eventually it busts for you. And quite honestly, Illinois was, with that physicality in the run game, those body blows wore on Nebraska's defense, where you're getting 5.5 a carry and 20 first down carries. You kept at it. So do you stay with the run game longer, even if it's not doing exactly what you want? To your point, it helps you out in the long term, the big picture, throwing the football. Mike, what do you anticipate with this Nebraska team Saturday?
I think that it's on the road for the first time, so I don't know how that's going to affect these guys. Ross-Ade Stadium is sold out, I saw in the notes. So despite their start, Boilermakers have going to have a full house on hand. How is that going to affect the younger players on the Huskers? How's that going to affect Dylan Raiola? I think that Nebraska will respond. I think that Nebraska will have looked at what happened against Illinois and will have made some adjustments and have tried to move forward with it. And, I think that Nebraska's going to come away with a win. But, as I said last week, as I keep saying, I think it has to be one game at a time. This is Purdue. This is the most important game on the schedule right now, because this is the one that you're playing. And, I think that Nebraska will do that, use that approach. I think they'll come away with a win, because I do think that this team is talented, and I do think it has potential. But you got to go one game at a time, and this is the one.
Mike, when you talk about that potential, based on what we saw on Friday, did that leave you feeling more optimistic or pessimistic for the next 3 games? Obviously, it changed how you felt, but would you describe your feelings around this team as optimistic or pessimistic as you look at the 3 games before Ohio State?
It's somewhere in between those two. Kind of a non-committal response, because I didn't know what was going to happen against Illinois. I do know that the Illini beat Kansas when Kansas was ranked and it looked like Kansas was going to be a pretty good team. So I thought, well, they have something going for them. I don't know. I want to see what happens against Purdue. And when I see what happens against Purdue, I'll have a better idea of what to expect against Rutgers. I don't even look to Indiana, because that's too far ahead. I want to see what happens in West Lafayette.
I think you're right there with a lot of Nebraska fans wondering what Saturday will reveal, and you go from bad mood to worse, or feel a little bit better if you can go get a road win with this team against a team that has been bludgeoned the last 2 weeks on the ground with that quarterback-eye-back combo in the run game. See how Nebraska decides to go attack on Saturday. Babbers will get caught up with you again next week as you blink and you're already 4 games into 2024, man. I appreciate your insight and time as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I told you last week who I was going to agree with, and you didn't give him an opportunity to say anything that I could agree with, so we'll work that out.
Appreciate you. There he is, Mike Babcock with us on Hail Varsity.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Open phones for you here till 5, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Justice is training in studio with Elijah. Anonymous says, I'd rather give up an occasional big play than never get off the field on third down. That was frustrating again. It kind of felt like Sparty all over again a year ago for Nebraska, trying to get off the field on third downs, and you had them in third and long. And they didn't always score on those drives, but they kept a hold of the football and kept running it on first down. Walters says Rutgers has lost 40 consecutive games versus ranked opponents. That's a little bit bigger than Nebraska's 0-25 streak.
It's the only school in Power 4 that actually has a streak longer than Nebraska.
Well, there you go. Gee, what if both come in ranked? Probably not for Nebraska, but Rutgers maybe.
Nebraska's got some hellish streaks right now. First off, not winning an NCAA tournament game in basketball. The longest streak in Power 4 to not make a bowl game.
Elijah Herbel, everybody.
It's just reality. The second longest streak in Power 4 for winning against a ranked opponent.
We got to put a bingo card together. Take a shot every time it's mentioned during a broadcast. Not ours. TV.
Okay, if it's during ours, oh boy, it's going to be a rough one today.
Julie says, I don't think that Purdue will be sold out. Just found tickets super cheap. So we're going to go as it's only 2.5 hours away.
Good for you, Julie.
Julie, awesome. We might have to check in with Julie for the Saturday morning show and see if she can give us a live look into the old tailgate scene.
Yeah, is
Purdue Pete roaming around, and are there whiskey and beer shots aplenty?
Let's see. Who was it earlier in the stream that was asking if West Lafayette was a dump?
I hear it's okay.
Yeah, I hear
some of the folks I've talked to that have gone say it's all right.
I hear the stadium sucks.
No, possibly.
But I guess maybe we'll get a report from Julie.
Bunch of astronauts and engineers. But the stadium's garbage. Come on, Drew Brees, donate some money. Let's stick on the money topic. You have Matthew Sluka, UNLV, and he said, peace out. I am redshirting this year. UNLV's ranked. They're 3-0. They're, in some prognostications, a 12-seed playoff from the G5. The running back has also said, see ya, I'm headed to the portal. What was promised was not delivered. So you can go a couple of different ways here. Either Luca's a greedy malcontent quitting, or he's going hero ball here, standing up to an organization that bait and switched him financially. There's an agent involved. There was no signed paperwork. You've got statements from the collective at UNLV. You have statements from the athletic department. I've seen anywhere between $3 and $12 grand is what's been delivered. $100G was promised. So my math is this. If you're going to UNLV, you are probably not a six-figure quarterback. This kid's proven me wrong because he's been pretty good. But this has gone on forever. You get told what you want to hear or need to hear. He's delivered the goods so far. That nice win against Kansas on the road, and I know KU's at 1-3 right now, but it still is pretty impressive. UNLV was awful forever. Odom's gotten there, and they're all of a sudden pretty decent. So the thing that I kind of revert back to is a couple of things. One, the 1890 Collective for Nebraska, that's stand up. Also, Matt Rule. Because as the head football coach or Fred Hoiberg or Will Bolt, you've got good dudes of character. And I'm not saying Odom is a bad character guy, but he's got to know, I would hope, what's going on with his quarterback other than being right with picking the right quarterback and getting him to come to UNLV. There's more of a role you need as a head coach. And if, Odom's got to write a check is what I'm saying if he wants to keep his quarterback and his running back. You can do that now.
Well, the coach can't. The coach can't physically write out of their own pocket. But I see what you're saying.
He's got to
find somebody.
He's got to make it right. Check. And with UNLV, I would think, with all those places that take juniors college fund, going back to the casino line from De Niro, you shouldn't have a problem making and raising money at UNLV. You've got a very competitive football team since the first time in forever. And I'm going back to the Randall Cunningham All-American punting era. So make it right. Otherwise, and this could be the first of many if kids are getting stiffed. It is pro ball. The other side of it is get it signed, dude. Signed in blood. Get a copy.
Don't just go to the Caesars bar and get it on the bar napkin.
Right. This isn't a play on 4th and 2. You're drawing up after 14 shots of Jaeger.
Yeah, after playing the slots for 2 hours.
Right. So, two-way street. What do you believe is real? Do you believe this collective is actually that
predatory?
Well,
for lack
incompetent.
Of a better term?
Incompetent.
I look at it as predatory. If you're telling a kid you're going to pay him 100 G's and you pay him 3, that's predatory to me.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you define it as.
No,
incompetence is one, but that to me sounds intentional.
Well, it's just fake promises. What you got to have in your football program, your basketball program, your athletic department, and too many guys are in charge of people or running pro teams. We'll just call them what they are now at the college level. Too many guys are incredible salesmen, but brutal at follow-through, brutal at being real. And I think you've got real talk from people that make decisions and talk to parents, talk to families, talk to potential players. I think you have that at Nebraska. Is it always perfect? I don't know. I'm not in the woodwork there. But I do know that you don't see this, and I would be surprised as all get out, and I'm getting on holier-than-thou soapbox territory for Nebraska, but I wouldn't see this with the people in charge ever happening to Nebraska. You can have a disagreement. You can have instances where the player didn't deliver what they were promised, like a starting quarterback job. You lost your starting job because you weren't performing. Away goes your endorsements. That's life. That happens. You get demoted or fired in this world. So it is a different era. But if UNLV got a hell of a good quarterback and ended up paying several thousand versus 100,000, that's awful. And this season just got derailed for them.
Well, yeah.
And it's unacceptable if I'm a UNLV fan.
If you're UNLV fan, it's unacceptable. What your team just did is it's like me going up to the bar and telling a lady I'm a high six-figure earner on the Forbes top 40 under 40 list, and then she finds out that I'm a radio show host, and none of those things are true. Like,
with a glorious mustache.
Like, you had it coming. If you promised a kid $100,000 and you don't deliver, it's your own damn fault.
And they thought they could just slow play him.
It's as simple as that. So I hope he lands on his feet. You hope he's not the victim here. He's played well enough that somebody's going to come calling this offseason. But if the stories we've heard are true, UNL has made their own bed, and they deserve everything that's come to them.
Zeus, it's 101.5 FM, 1240 AM in Lincoln, 590 in Omaha, News Talk 900 in Columbus, 1460, 1550, Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island on the AM. You're in the stream, Zeus. He's asking what dials we're on the radio. That's where you can find us along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Evan Bland in 15 minutes. We'll talk some of the latest from Troy Dannon. And what's your mood right now as a Nebraska fan going into Purdue?
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. The other Dave says UNLV made a verbal inducement to get this quarterback. While legal, it's still unethical and should be honored to prevent further program damage. Start passing the hat in Vegas, man, if you want to stay ranked and pretty good. Scott, emails in. Great show, guys, as always. I'm sorry, but Easy Ed needs to go on a permanent restaurant tour. Scott chiming in on special teams. He took a kicker with ice water in his veins and a monster leg and has apparently ruined him. Scott will say this. Elvano got injured. He also inherited a punter who many consider to be a pro and turned him into a hot mess. All the special teams are a garbage fire. I've seen enough to believe nothing will get fixed with him at the wheel. Still season left, but Scott, you can't live life with special teams not being good.
Well, there's a couple.
Todd, real quick, is back for an email. Says Rule isn't going to use Harburg much anywhere because if Dillon goes down, Harburg's our guy. I think you might see him sprinkle it in the red zone.
But yeah, to get back to the Foley comment here, one thing I do want to make abundantly clear is Matt Rule will never fire a coach in season.
No.
So you may have seen enough, but I think Ed Foley's evaluation period will run through Black Friday. So keep that in mind here. Do I think what he has done up to this point with special teams has been great? No. Do I think he's got another 8 games to figure it out? Yes, I do, and get things improved. So that evaluation period will continue running through Black Friday, just as Justice's evaluation period begins and runs to the end of next hour.
So you're going to duct tape 6'9" of him into the studio chair, and you're going to move in here with me? Is that what you're saying?
I'm staying in here.
Oh, you are?
I'm staying. As opposed to using duct tape, I'm using physical force.
Yeah, I know where I'm betting.
Yeah, no. So Justice, we're moving him over to my seat. We're flipping chairs.
Okay.
And we're gonna let Justice run the show here in hour 2. There's been some questions. People saying if you're not gonna let him run the board, you might as well let him kick some field goals.
I know he can call for the ball in the paint like a young Bill Walton. That being said, how is he as a kicker? Justice, are you good with the leg?
Well, Schmidt, I'd say this. I was not particularly proficient with my leg. Played soccer in high school. Frankly, wasn't very good.
They stick you in the goal so no one could get the ball in?
They tried that out for a little bit, and they said, maybe it's better that we throw you out for football. And listen, I mean, if they need me to go out there and run a little pick route to get some of these receivers free, I bet I'm benching as much as Nayor. I could get out there and throw some DBs around. Shoulder check an Illinois guy back into Bielema and send him back to the buffets, if you know what I'm saying.
Wow. So
well, he's not short of confidence here.
No, I love it. Now, what do you bench? 312?
I mean, shoot, on a good day we're benching 225.
Okay.
We can load 2 plates on each side and get that bad boy repping. But we like to make sure that we're getting full form, full range of motion. So
okay. It's about the functionality. Just brute strength where you can rip your arm off like a Wookiee and beat you with it. Okay, let's talk about buckling up because Justice is running the boat in hour 2. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Find us Friday, Ameristar, Council Bluffs, 4 to 6. Roadshow coming up with Hail Varsity as we gear up for a full football weekend. I love those Football Friday shows on the road. Nebraska's on the road, so are we at Ameristar, Council Bluffs Casino, right outside Amerisports, the sports book. All that NFL and college you can pick. We want to see you there on Friday. Evan Bland on the way with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Justice is driving the bus right now, and everyone in the stream is giving it to Justice. Justice, apparently you need facial hair. Justice, the pride of Oklahoma, all 6'8" of him. And Sexy Grinch, formerly Cruz, says, "Who is this big fella? Is it bring your kid to work day, Elijah? ? Who brought Elijah's henchmen in?" They think that poor old Justice should have some sort of an Irish accent.
Now that's fair. There's only enough room in this studio for one mustache, so I'm not sure about the facial hair, but the Irish accent, he's got a decent one, actually.
Okay.
It's not great. We're not going to debut it on
No,
here
we won't.
yet.
We need to get to Evan Bland. Brian checks in the stream as well on special teams. Can read and follow along with Evan and great coverage in Nebraska at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter is where you follow him, omaha.com where you read him. Evan, how's your week? Thanks for a few minutes, man.
Doing ready, just queuing up the playlist for West Lafayette's road trip this weekend. But no, doing all right.
So you led off with something that we discuss from time to time. Is it just you rolling? What's the convoy look like, and what is the playlist? Let's go there before we get to Purdue Pete and how creepy he is.
Well, certainly we could talk about that. But no, it'll be Sam McEwen and myself and our photographer, Nico, and off we go. You're going to be driving all day Friday, and then one of the benefits, of course, of the early kick is we can start on our way home Saturday evening. So that's kind of the general plan. And, we don't do anything too crazy as far as the playlist goes. I tend to seek out classic rock if we can pull it off. Sometimes we'll do podcasts. Sometimes, quite honestly, we should probably just stick our recorder out there and record a road podcast. I think sometimes those are the best ones, windshield thoughts or things like that. But it tends to go kind of quick. And first road trip of the year, so we'll ease into it. We haven't been, kind of worn down by the road at this point. So it'll be a good one, I think.
You got to take us through. The podcast selection's always interesting on a road trip, because if I was with Schmidt, I'd be diving into Lord of the Rings lore with the podcast. He wouldn't quite like that.
I would jump out either the passenger or driver's side seat, depending on how long he made me listen.
You got to find the right podcast, though, Evan. Without naming any shows, because I know you're probably out there listening to us. Is it true crime, or are you going sports? What are you going with that podcast theme to keep everybody happy?
I personally, I like fiction, so I'll listen to just a good fiction novel. Occasionally we'll do sports podcasts. If we're doing it like communally, it's usually interviews that have been done by coaches or players, and maybe other Big Ten games, things like that. So, nothing too crazy, but Fridays, generally kind of our rhythm, at least in the media, has been Fridays during the season are the closest thing you get to a little bit of time off. So if I can put the mind, sort of like Isaac Gifford said this week, if you can put the mind on something else just for a little bit, it kind of brings you back all the fresher, ready to go. So I try to go something fiction, and sometimes coming to an agreement in the car with 2 or 3 people can be the biggest challenge. So if you get something, you ride with it, and I think it tends to make the time go by a little faster. My advice, Lord of the Rings audiobook. It's what Schmidt and I are going to listen to on the way to Columbus, and he has no say in the matter. I'm flying.
Right. that just sealed it. Evan, I want to get your thought here on Nebraska's second halves. Not just scoring, but the thought about being a physical fourth quarter run football team. It's not been a full 4 quarters for this team, and I'm not knocking them. They're a work in progress. That being said, do you think this team can grow into that? Because it is Big Ten season, it is Big Ten play, and Illinois had a dominant second half, very physical second half, and it showed up in the fourth quarter and overtime. I think the first 3 games, to me, I don't put a ton of stock into some of the shaky second halves. I mean, in every case, they were up big. The game was mostly secured by the time they got to the fourth quarter, and so Nebraska did what any developmentally minded program would do, and that's they went to their reserves. And sometimes you're going to have mistakes and penalties, and Nebraska was still able to finish the game off with relatively little drama. So I wasn't too concerned. Just statistically, those numbers maybe hint at something that wasn't quite there. But yeah, I think the Illinois game for sure was one that Nebraska was disappointed in. I mean, you could just tell they hated to admit that they were not the more physical team, especially in the second half and in overtime. That's the identity they want to have. And Marcus Satterfield, I thought, laid it out again pretty well this week, like their vision. And it hasn't always manifested this way, but their vision is to be that body blow sort of offense where you are running the ball, and by the time you get to the fourth quarter, that's the point where the opponent concedes or breaks or wears down or whatever it is, and Nebraska can go with it. And it didn't go that way. It went the other way, where Illinois got stronger in the second half, and Nebraska had the penalties, and then certainly everything fell apart in overtime for what it was. So I think that's the vision. It's obviously it hasn't been realized yet, and I think some of it, the discussion is probably going to have to come back to that balance between the offense and the defense, because Nebraska hasn't been running it as much. That's exposed the defense a little bit more,
to a higher snap count than they've had, and that's why there were questions this week to Tony White about the subbing patterns and how much you want to put a starting lineup out there before you kind of go to that second wave and try to keep everybody fresh. So, like, running the ball is good in its own right, but it also affects the other side of the ball. It affects time of possession, and so I think that's something that Nebraska is still working toward. It's in some ways it sounds strange to say, but in some ways that's harder to do when you have a quarterback as talented as Dylan Raiola. You want him to be making decisions and passing, but Nebraska also wants to be that physical run team, if for no other reason than to make things more manageable for the defense. So that's something I think they're still working through to trying to find the balance for, and maybe that happens this weekend at Purdue.
Evan Bland with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Omaha World Herald, at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. Nebraska just doesn't seem like a team right now, Evan, that can just flip a switch and just start running at will in the fourth quarter. And I'm not saying they've abandoned the run. They just can kind of do what they want. They've tried to run it on first down with varying success against different opponents, but it wasn't as successful as you need it to be against future opponents that are going to look like Illinois, play like Illinois, be at the same talent level or greater as Illinois. Can you all of a sudden poof, then just, all right, start running the football and expect it to work? I guess, where are you with Nebraska's run game right now, handoff run game, because it was well documented. Purdue's just brutal at stopping the quarterback, running back combo. The last 2 weeks they were anyway. You're not going to have that Saturday. So is Nebraska able to just kind of flip a switch and run it? Well, they need to stay committed to it longer.
Well, I think it's an opponent where a lot of those questions can be answered, Chris. Like, if they were playing Ohio State this week, I don't know that that's necessarily the recipe for victory, but against a Purdue team that's really struggled, as you mentioned, against the run, certainly the quarterback run, like, this should be a game where Nebraska is able to move the ball on the ground with some degree of success. Incidentally, I'll be curious to see how much they use Heinrich Harburg in this game. That's been a point of emphasis for them. It's been to get him more usage, and what better time than against an opponent that was diced up by Notre Dame and Oregon State's quarterbacks. So, first of all, I'm curious about that. And then secondly, Nebraska's got to work through a few things. They need to figure out their running back rotation. I mean, Matt Rule mentioned he would like Emmett Johnson to get some carries. He didn't get any last week. So how do you insert him into that rotation with Dante Dowdell and Ramir Johnson, potentially Gabe Ervin? And then beyond that, you still have to figure out what the offensive line is going to look like with Turner Corcoran out for an extended period of time. So Nebraska's on their third left tackle. They have to decide, are they going to roll with Gunnar Gatula, who looked pretty good in spot duty, or do you shuffle some things up and maybe move Micah Mazuka to the outside, or Tyler Kanak, or Henry Letufsky, or whatever it might be? So those are all things they have to answer before they even get to sort of the strategic and identity piece of this thing. But I think Purdue comes at an ideal time in Nebraska's schedule because, and they'll say it every week, it's about them. But this week it really is about them in the sense that if Nebraska does what it wants to do to the level that it is accustomed to doing it, it should beat Purdue. So if ever there's a week where sort of the recipe to victory matches up with what happens on the field, I think that would be this week, and we'll see if Nebraska is able to do that, because it can't rely on that quarterback run game the way that it has, and in that way that's been such a crutch for Nebraska in recent years. It's going to have to do it more conventionally or with a wildcat sort of situation, so we'll see what they can do.
Evan, to put everything we've kind of said here simply, this game on Saturday has the potential to be a get-right game, fair?
Totally. Yes, I think so.
And with that in mind, getting right, what is the number one thing that you have in your mind that both Nebraska has the potential to get right on Saturday and you think they will get right?
I think it's got to be defensive performance. I mean, that's the thing that was so out of character, especially late against Illinois. And there were some concerns even in the Northern Iowa game about tackling and yards after contact. Like, I think that's the area where you look at what Purdue's done offensively. They have Devin Mockabee, who's been a nice running back for them, a feature piece. But, they don't run it a ton. Hudson Card hasn't been dynamic. They have a tight end, Max Clare, who's kind of become their focal point as a receiver, but they don't really have any wideouts that necessarily scare you. And Card's not a mobile guy necessarily himself either. So, like, I think that's where it has to start was the Illinois game sort of an anomaly in terms of what Nebraska's defense did, especially against the run, or is that, a harbinger of something else that's yet to come? I think that the defense, full of veterans and experience and all the rest, absolutely can have a game where it restores that confidence and gets back into the way that we've been used to seeing Tony White's defenses the last year and a half almost. I think there are other areas that remain sort of fluid, like we mentioned, the running game. I think that's something they're still working through. Special teams, I'm not sure there's an immediate fix there, even schematically or personnel. Like I think you kind of just work through it as best you can. But I think defensively is where you got to, if you're Nebraska, come out of that Purdue game and go, okay, that defense is the anchor that we thought it was, and it was able to tighten up and be dominant against an offense that struggled.
Evan, with the running back rotation, is that a Barthel thing, or is that synced up with Barthel per play call?
I think it's a combination, and Matt Rule would say that he is a factor in that too. I mean, he was the one who, again, said after the Illinois game that they feel like they needed to get Emmett Johnson the ball, and it just didn't happen. Satterfield, I thought, made a point this week to say that he thought the Illinois game was more of a vision game where you're going to have to see some of those holes and some of those creases as opposed to needing them to materialize before you get through them. So I think they do recognize that there's some differing skill sets with these backs. I mean, Dowdell clearly has become kind of that hammer, and Ramirez your straight line speed guy, and Emmett Johnson might be your most shifty back at this point, who's able to move laterally quickly in the hole and burst upfield. So I think there has been an acknowledgement from Nebraska that they would like to see Emmett Johnson get a chance more. But I think the last couple of weeks, too, have been a reminder that when you're playing offenses that want to kill the clock against you, you're not going to get as many snaps offensively as maybe you would like to have. So I think they're going to just have to move forward and be a little more judicious about how they spread that out, knowing they're maybe not going to get 60 or 70 snaps a game.
Evan, last thought here, probably about 60 seconds left before we got a hard break. As we talk about the running game, Mazuka, the impact of Mazuka, do you think we see him on Saturday? What's your read? What's your feel there?
I think so. They've been kind of vague about what his issue is. He set out with that coach's decision against UNI, came back on special teams last week against Illinois. You would think the next step gradually on that ramp up would be a return to the line, and certainly now after the Corcoran injury too. I mean, you're gonna need that depth and that road grader in the middle who can kind of pave the way for what they want to do in the run game. So I think Nebraska has been pretty attentive to what Micah's needs have been. He's not hurt, that sort of thing. So yes, I think they need him, and what better time to get him back out there than to try to bounce back and get that first Big Ten win.
Evan Bland queuing up the podcast/playlist. He is going to be in West Lafayette. Him, Sam McEwen, the great folks from the Omaha World Herald on site for you with that, omaha.com, at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. And Evan, enjoy it. Is there about 30 seconds? Is there a spot you hit in West Lafayette, bar or restaurant?
My experience there has been pretty limited, honestly, Chris. We've kind of stayed at hotels a ways out because there just hasn't been a lot of availability.
Sure.
I know the hot dogs at Ross-Ade Stadium are so-so, and that you got to keep your head on a swivel for Purdue Pete, especially as the sun goes down.
That sounds wrong. Evan, be good, buddy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Evan Bland with us, Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Justice is driving the bus. He is in training. Elijah has not broke out the shock collar yet.
And I won't.
Good luck with that. He outweighs and out-heights you.
Well, that's not my style of leadership and training either,
Don't let him fool you, Justice. If you're watching on the stream, Justice is a mountain. Elijah's not short either, but Yeah, you be nice to Justice. He could go incredible Hulk here.
And now.
That mouse is giving us issues right now. That was not a Justice issue. That is that mouse. The left click gets stuck. It just got stuck there real bad.
Don't break anything, Justice. You're all good, brother. You're good.
You're doing a great job.
Open phones here till about 5:40. 489-1240. 800-825-5865.
Schmitty, we were talking a little bit off the air about.
I got to go with Walter's comment real quick.
Oh, no, he's going Diddy.
Walter from Philly says Purdue Pete will be spraying baby oil into the crowd at halftime.
And I was going to sit here and say,
wrong.
You were talking about the shot collar, and we were spending some time off air talking about training dogs. I believe more that the reward means more than the negativity. Okay. And I'm not going to make a baby oil joke. I'm not going to.
No, that's...
Not that kind of reward.
Horrible. So bad. Back to football.
Please.
Back to football.
No Diddy rewards today.
No awards. How about them Bears? In a serious note, and our friend at Husker Game Day tweeted this out when it comes to mood around the program right now, or not even mood, but tone. And quite honestly, if you're a Nebraska fan and you lose in 31-24 overtime fashion, but it's not a bleep show in overtime. It's not horrific with penalties and losing your mind. And they hit a couple of passes per se versus just running it down your throat on first down. You won't like it, but you're like, okay, they didn't play awful. Nebraska didn't play well on the defensive side of the ball, clearly. They played good enough, and they had shots to score on 6 out of their 8 possessions. Didn't. They still put up 24. That would have won you about every ball game last year. So the thought I have, in my vibe with this when it comes to tone, is it's gone from excitement and unbeaten and getting on that bandwagon of 7-0 going into Columbus, understanding that Illinois was a potential pothole, understanding that next week is still a pothole until it isn't with this football program. And then Rutgers. I mean, there's totally losable games. You just didn't think the team was going to find ways to lose or play poorly enough to contribute to losing, on top of getting out physicaled. I say this with Nebraska. The tone and mood and vibe is it's back to wait and see, right? You're probably a little nervous about Saturday because it's a road ball game, but deep down you're like, they should win, they should cover. If they don't, alarm bells. You're probably a little nervous for Rutgers just because of Illinois running the football on you, Northern Iowa running the football on you. So let's see if the defense snaps out of it and you get better offensive performance. But you've shifted back to that wait and see. And that's kind of how the feel was going into Colorado because that was your first mile marker, your first test. It was somebody that you thought was quality, or at least from a matchup and stage standpoint, you wanted to see a performance. And you've gotten not a complete one, but you've gotten some okay glimpses on offense. That's what I kind of read into the vibe right now. It's back to wait and see. What are they really going to be? How good are they? And can they fix?
Well, it's the negativity, in my opinion, which I think is an interesting topic to have, is where does the negativity stem from? Because if you go back to preseason, the discussion was, man, just give us a competent offense and we'll be happy. That was kind of the mood around Husker Nation.
Because you expected the defense to be as good or better than a year ago, and you had questions about kicking, didn't you?
But the one of the things that we discussed was the late game situations, the late game management. Well, it can't get worse, can it? That was one of the talking points that we had. Well, it hasn't gotten better. And that's, I think, one of the big concerns is you got the one thing on your checklist that you were really looking for all off season long. More offense, better offense, and offense that you can rely upon to go put up some points when you need some points. And if you want a positive takeaway from Nebraska's game on Friday night, they were able to hang around in what was the Big Ten version of a shootout.
That's fair.
That's the Big Ten version of a shootout because it was still ball control, but lo and behold, you're putting up 50-plus points total in that football game if you're talking betting from the over-under point of view. You put up over 50 points. Like, that's a Big Ten-esque shootout. And Nebraska would have had no chance to hang around in a Big Ten-esque shootout last year. The concern is you have a defense that was billed to you as a defense that wasn't going to give up points this year, that wasn't going to get into shootouts because that's not how they're built, and a team that through all their offseason training was going to be better in the tight moments, was going to be better in the late game situations, was going to be able to not only win in late game moments, but excel in late game moments. And in both of those things that I don't want to say were promised to you, but were expected, you fell short of, despite the fact that the one thing that you really wanted this offseason was better. I think that's where a lot of the negativity stems from, because it feels like Friday night was a one step forward, two steps back kind of night.
No, it was super uneven. Well, the positive is, okay, as poorly as the defense played, they forced 2 turnovers that one did lead to points, the other should have led to points. You dial up Sierra off the edge, sack, fumble, recovery, short field. You burn 5 minutes, you're under 3 when you kick that field goal. So technically it could have, should have, would have been 27-24. Does your D go out there and get a stop? What have we talked about? Offense gets the ball, puts a drive together, takes the lead. Defense comes out, gets the stop, game over, ball game. Yeehaw, you win. Unfortunately, you miss a pass, you miss field goal, and overtime is something that you clearly didn't plan for. I think there's a couple things of, all right, coming to Jesus with the overconfidence. I think the staff was overconfident about just going in. It's Illinois. Not that they overlooked Illinois, but I thought they thought they weren't worried about losing to Illinois. And then 2, just the prep. These guys were trying to read a foreign language with the goal line stuff. And Tony White said as much yesterday. Not necessarily me trying to read Spanish, no, but they weren't prepped looks-wise for what Illinois was going to do. So that was surprising to hear from the due diligence, the thoroughness. As detailed as the staff is or the head man is, wasn't that way on Friday night. So, but their tone and attitude was unacceptable and angry, and now go do something about it. It's not a referendum on the program with a loss, Bud, but it is, wow, it can't happen again like that. They're supposed to be beyond this point.
Yeah, and with all the negativity that stemmed from the game, it's sort of hard to believe that this team they had a win in their grasp on Friday night.
Well, that's how do you look at it, though? Do you look at it, 2 plays, they win it, or do they did too much wrong to win it? I mean, and that's the tight moments, too. That's the thing you don't know about.
And that's kind of where my mood on this team has shifted as the week has gone on, is Friday night, they found a way to piss it away again. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the mindset among Husker Nation through the weekend on Friday. I think it's still over. Is man, what do we know about this team? They always find a way to lose it in the close moments. As the week has gone on, I have shifted more towards the mindset of, well, the Big Ten's a gauntlet. You knew they're going to be gauntlet-type games with Illinois that you think you're better than, but they're still going to come in and give you a scare and really battle you for all you're worth. And, at the end of the day, it's still a work in progress, this team. And you're 2 plays away from winning that, whether it be the touchdown with Lindenmeyer, whether it's Nayor hanging on in the end zone, whether it's the field goal getting knocked through the uprights. You're right there. And I understand the disappointment and the negativity with the way in which you lost, but there's so much good that was in that game as well that I don't think we would have seen from this team in years past.
See, I mean, there's 17 points again left on the field, fair. But to me, it's more about, okay, did Nebraska lose it? Did Illinois win it? Illinois came out and kicked your butt in the second half with scheme, with physicality, and with making plays. They were down at half. They outscored you in the second half. They rolled you in overtime. So as much as Nebraska's a couple plays away in the final moments, Illinois was right there. Illinois was the better football team. Clearly the scoreboard said it, but they looked at from an eye test standpoint. From tackles made, from play calls to execution, and then just to delivering in the clutch. They didn't blink when they had to go tie it, when they had to go get a stop, when they got a hold in the red zone after a turnover at midfield, and then to come out in overtime and drill you for 21 and then Spider 2Y banana you to death for a third or fourth time or however many times they dialed it up. That's my takeaway. Yeah, Nebraska could have escaped, but Illinois was a better second-half football team.
And I think the response this week comes down to what your expectations were for this team coming into it. And I said that, I believe that was on our Saturday morning show, and I'll say it again now. Depending on who you talk to, it really comes down to what their expectations were preseason and after week 3 to determine how you feel after the Illinois loss. Because I think it was the reminder, this team is not a college football playoff team. And we understood that in all likelihood coming into this season. Then you have your expectations changed. This is the return to more realistic expectations for me. That no, this isn't a college football playoff team. This isn't a Nebraska team from the 90s. There's still things that need to be cleaned up. There's still areas this team needs to get better as the year goes on. And you now have a fantastic opportunity in front of you with Purdue coming at. It really comes at the right time, this game, for you to, as I said with Evan, get right, to clean up some of those errors, to show yourself, hey, what we put out on the field on Friday night is not who we are. And that's going to happen in the Big Ten. It's going to happen in football. It's all about that response now, and it's on to Purdue. I think you have a great opportunity in front of you to take some of that negative sentiment around Husker Nation and turn it positive yet again, resetting those expectations once again, which resetting expectations happens throughout an entire football season. That's what I think this week is. I think it's a reset of expectations for people that follow this Husker football team.
Well, just go look like a better football team. Go play like a better football team. Go dominate for 4 quarters as the better football team. And block, tackle, run the football. Don't be bad in the kicking game. That's it. Looked pretty good. I'm getting the stare down from Justice. Hail Varsity. It continues, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert is with us. And Dr. Brandon, we are quickly moving through fantasy football season. And all those folks you knew growing up, man, a lot of folks that wear purple on Sunday. And how about Sam Darnold? Wow, what a start for this Viking offense.
Yeah, absolutely. A really great start for them. And obviously I'm used to the days of a Brett Favre in uniform for a little while up there. Was always fun. But, yeah, I think Sam's been a nice addition for them. Now we just got to get him healthy.
We do. And the good news for Sam Darnold is no structural damage to that knee. You've got a left bone bruise, but it looked a little touch and go. An MRI was run. Big matchup this weekend with the 3-0 Vikes, 3-0 Packers. We'll see if Jordan Love gets back with that jacked ankle. But what's your prognostication here for Darnold? And let's talk about this knee.
Yeah, definitely an interesting injury here. So we've talked a little bit about these before. So there's things called a deep bone bruise, cartilage bruise, chondral contusion. Those are terms that we would use interchangeably and kind of in the sports medicine world. And essentially when you think about what that is, so in the knee, for example, when we're talking about a bone bruise or chondral contusion, so where your cartilage is in the knee, the cartilage is that smooth surface on the end of the bone. Underneath that cartilage sits on top of the bone. We call it the subchondral bone. And that bone's really hard, acts as basically a foundation for that cartilage to sit on top of and push against. So when you have a deep bone bruise, what happens is you have some type of impact, whether it be another player running into your knee or you're running your knee into the turf or just the act of cutting, planting, twisting, and that, for example, the thigh bone or the femur comes down and slams into the bottom bone of the knee called the tibia or the shin, and that impact basically transfers that force through the cartilage down into the bone underneath. And essentially what happens there is you bruise that bone underneath or kind of fill it up with fluid and inflammation. We don't see typically a true like crack or fracture in the bone, but it's kind of a precursor to that is essentially what it is. And so that's what we talk about. We're talking about a chondral contusion or bone bruise, which it sounds like that's what Sam has in this scenario. great news is for him, don't ever typically have to do surgery on these unless there's some other kind of injury along with it, which obviously can happen. But it sounds like, fortunately for him, they're just talking about an isolated chondral contusion.
Dr. Brendan, one of the things that we know is that they want Sam Darnold to go through a normal week of preparation. We'll get into that here in just a moment, but we also know that he underwent an MRI on Sunday night following the game. Does a bone bruise in the knee show some of the same symptoms as, say, structural damage to the ligaments in the knee?
Yeah, and so, just from an imaging perspective, obviously MRI is kind of where you move towards that will pick these up. You typically can't see a bone bruise or chondral contusion on an X-ray. But as you move into that MRI, you can start to make sense of, where is this pathology? And so what you'll see on an MRI with a deep bone bruise or chondral contusion is you'll see all this kind of whitish area, which is extra fluid, extra inflammation. That's where that is. Pardon me. And then obviously while you're there looking at that, then you look at the other surrounding structures. So pretty easy if you're going to have a force large enough to cause, an injury to that bone under the cartilage, and clearly that force is large enough to injure something else. To your question, can you, tear a ligament, have an injury to the ACL, have an injury to the meniscus? Can you maybe chip off the cartilage kind of above where that bone bruise injury is? And the answer is yes to all of those. And in fact, we'll talk about one of the more common injuries that we see that we've talked about on the show here are ACL tears. Sam doesn't have one as far as we know. But whenever we see an ACL tear, that force is so great for that ACL to tear that on the outside of the knee, those two bones do crash together, and you'll see these kind of corresponding what we call bone bruises in the outside of the knee, where that basically femur has made contact with a tibia. And that's kind of a classic representation of having a ligament injury along with the bone bruise.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. At Jock Doc Wednesday, Sam Darnold, our topic. Vikes at 3-0, as Darnold's been incredible when you look at his passer rating and the fit with that Vikings offense and all their weapons. It's pretty fortunate that he should be able to bounce back. We've kind of highlighted worst case, best case. What's the discomfort level like? And from just a mechanic standpoint, he's a right-handed quarterback. The follow-through with that left plant foot leg, really. What's he looking at Sunday from a functional standpoint?
Yeah, and so these are really, it's a great question, Chris. These are really variable. So we will see some of these athletes that have sometimes a pretty sizable chondral contusion, and it's not all that symptomatic for them, and they can get back pretty quickly, maybe have some achiness, feel it more kind of with some of the higher level weightlifting activities, but they can usually manage those and continue to play in the game. A lot of these are definitely location based, so it depends on where is the chondral contusion located. Does play a big role in terms of how much pain you have, just in terms of cutting, jumping, those kind of things. So if you have it more in that kind of loading zone area, then that's even a small bruise in that area is going to really hurt and probably take you longer to get back or longer to push through, versus you might have a larger bruise in an area that's not necessarily a true loading zone. Like, for example, if somebody has a hyperextension injury to their knee, they'll often have a bruise along what we call the end of the femur, a mediofemoral condyle, and some of those get high enough that it's not really in a big loading zone. So even though you do an MRI and you're kind of shocked by how big it is, they might not have that much pain, and they can go pretty quickly. So size of the lesion doesn't always determine how long it takes to get back. These definitely are a symptom-based kind of return-to-play injury, and so it's really based on how they feel, how quickly they get the motion back. And typically with these, you can be reasonably aggressive in terms of getting them back, as long as you don't have a bunch of swelling in the knee, that quad muscle still looks great, and again, the pain is manageable.
How bad is his mobility going to be maneuvering in the pocket, or at least evading rush? He's not Lamar Jackson, clearly, with scrambles ever. but that said, he's able to stay alive in the pocket long enough to find people.
Yeah, I think he'll probably, again, not being able to see his MRI, know exactly where this is and the size of it. It'll be interesting to see what his mobility looks like. I would assume his mobility will be a touch limited. But I still think he'll be able to drop back really well. And in particular, if they're going to put him back there to play, I think his drop back ability will be really good and probably won't be very limited for him.
Dr. Brandon, last thought here before we get out. As we discuss that mobility, how he's going to be playing on Sunday, is there anything that can be done from a pregame pain management standpoint?
Yeah, so these respond really well, to your kind of your classic anti-inflammatories, rest, ice, those kind of things. You start talking about other bigger meds, like you go with a stronger kind of anti-inflammatory. You could use something like an oral we call Toradol. That's a really kind of souped up anti-inflammatory. You need to be careful with those. Those are the kind of things that can beat up your stomach and kidneys. Likely they're not going to do that in this scenario. Things I would not recommend would be literally like shooting up the knee with a steroid or with like lidocaine pregame. So I wouldn't utilize that pregame, but you could utilize that just as an outpatient in the clinic. Consider a steroid shot for these would be very reasonable. Give them a week or so to kind of let that steroid shot set in before you let them go back and play, and that would be a nice option for them as well, just cutting down on that inflammation and the pain associated with it.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Sam Darnold, our topic. Dr. Brandon, good to spend some time. Thanks so much for your insight.
Okay, fellas, take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice driving the show here as he's getting trained up. Big thanks to all of you. As Josh was able to pop in the stream, I thought for some reason the Packers were unbeaten. They are not. 2-1. Minnesota is 3-0. But a good weekend of that NFC Norris division. Should be a good weekend of ball. Nebraska, of course, heading on out to Purdue. We got Bama and Georgia. We'll have our Friday forecast. Reminder, we're going to be at Ameristar, Council Bluffs Casino this Friday, 4 to 6 road show. Excited for that. The first of many road shows when Nebraska's on the road. Road weekends will be at Ameristar, Council Bluffs Casino, except for the Ohio State weekend. We'll be in Columbus for that. But home weekends, of course, always find us at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on Fridays when Nebraska's at home and the Graduate. And they have the single barrel inside the Graduate, 9th and P downtown Lincoln, Thursdays and Saturday pre-games. A cause that you need to be a part of, and we're talking big brothers, big sisters. They empower young people through one-on-one mentoring, relationships, and they do an amazing job of unlocking potential. You can make a difference today, and we ask you to join Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Become a big brother, a big sister, or a big couple today. MentorOmaha.org is where you log on to get signed up. Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They want to recruit 60 men in 60 days by October 30th. And they're calling all men and women around the metro region to step forward, become a big brother or big sister today, and get matched up with that little and create an amazing bond, lasting connection, and mentor someone that needs it, that wants it in their life. You meet twice a month, and these activities are something you'll both enjoy. We're talking ice cream or ball games or video games. Just spend time together. And, of course, Big Brothers and Big Sisters do a great job of matching the little with the big, that match support specialist. Log on today and be part of the push 60 Men, 60 Days, October 30th for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. MentorOmaha.org. Are we going to get Justice roped into the old steak and a beer bet at some point?
Are you aware?
I'm not.
Okay. So what we do is before big sporting events, as opposed to betting our cold, hard cash, which has been hard-earned, we bet over a...
One of us owes the other a side of beef by the end of the year, and we carry it over.
It's a hypothetical steak and a beer every single week that eventually will get paid up, maybe.
Never.
Yeah, well, we always... You could have come over to my house on Saturday, and we could have been pork butting a beer.
No, I know.
You didn't make it.
I was playing golf. I was playing golf all day.
Yeah. Did you lose 11 balls?
I did. By the time the cooler was empty around the 12th hole, it was a bad day, brother. It was a great day, but it was just a bad day on the back.
Well,
9.
Do you have a steak and a beer bet in mind?
Well, I think we save it for Thursday.
Yeah.
Because we'll do our Thursday night football. Do we have a Thursday night game worth a damn?
No.
No?
No. I can't remember off the top of my head who it is, but it's not good.
Okay. That's just kind of how Thursdays roll.
Cowboys and Cowboys Giants.
Supposed to be good. On paper, it looks great. Bleach your eyes. Back tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.